All right. If you can say and spell your first and last name and give us your title.
Tim Burchett, Burchett, United States Congressman, 2nd Congressional District.
All right. So you recently sent a letter to HHS about a rule. It was either a rule or a ruling that was going to force, if I'm understanding it correctly, force doctors to perform
Sex change
sex
operation.
change. Yeah, yeah, on kids.
Yeah,
So can you kind of talk about your reasoning behind sending this letter?
yeah, because I think it's they're butchers. I think they're basically sacrificing these children on some altar of wokeness. It's some vast minority thinks is appropriate, and it's just not. It's been widely called out. They're just chasing dollars. Is all they're doing, and it's pathetic that this Democrat administration. I had a bill, actually an amendment that they blocked that would have prohibited any federal funds that would, or tax dollars, I guess you could say, that would for any of the gender transition surgeries, and they blocked it. Even, I mean, this goes to the highest level, and the Democrat Party ought to be ashamed, really, or maybe I'd say most of the locals don't know what the nationals are doing, but I'd submit to you that a lot of them do, and a lot of them support this, and there's just no way a minor, has any idea what's going on. These are permanent changes they're making, and it's just wrong. There's just nothing's going to come good out of this. We're going to have a bunch of kids that have been butchered, and then later in life, and it's not going to be too much later, they're going to realize the problem. They're on tape. The Vanderbilt folks are on tape saying how that this, they'll have ongoing treatments and things. Well, of course they will. They'll have psychological issues for the rest of their lives, but they're going to have to continue still with the hormone therapy. As much as I'd like to be a Corvette, if I go sit in the garage, doesn't mean I'm going to be one. And when these kids get butchered, little boys getting their testicles cut off and little girls having their breasts removed, they're still inside and in their brain, they're still going to be a little boy or a little girl. And so we've just got to get control of this. This is something out of a horror movie.
All right, so that kind of brings me to my next question, and I feel like you kind of answered this briefly. So you don't believe that a child at that age can identify or knows at that time whether, like, you know what I'm trying to say, that
Yeah, it cannot. I've heard people say that if my parents had listened to me, they would have gouged one of my eyes out and cut one of my legs off because I wanted to be a pirate. I mean, a kid at that age has no idea about what a little boy or a little girl is, or the differences. I mean, they're going to see the differences, subtle changes, but a kid playing on the playground, just because a little boy picks up a doll or a little girl picks up a baseball bat, I just don't see that being the case. And we've got some really sick individuals out there who are perpetrating this on our children, and it's here. It's in Tennessee, and I think we'd better address it at the federal level, and we better say that none of our tax dollars are going to any of this. That's the way you stop it. They're going to force insurance companies to pay for it. We know that our military now is paying for it, and it's a very expensive procedure, and it costs money for the rest of their lives to maintain. And there's no going back.
All right, and was there anything that I might have missed about the letter that you wanted our viewers to know about?
Well, first of all, doctors take the Hippocratic oath, and it says do no harm. Now, what about this? Has got to be the most harmful thing you can do to the least amongst us, and that's our children.
All right, and so switching topics, following I believe it was a horse accident. How's your daughter doing?
Yeah, she got run over by one of her horses. She's doing good. She had a little surgery yesterday over at UT Hospital, and they're just, I can't say enough good things about the doctors and the nurses and the technicians and everybody. She's doing really well. She had a lot of fluid on her pancreas that had to be removed, and and we couldn't be happier. We thought we were going to delay it for a little while, but she was in a great deal of pain, and she's a very tough little cowgirl. So I would appreciate everybody's prayers for my daughter. She's on the mend though, and she'll be back on those horses pretty soon. And thank you for asking.
No problem. And switching gears again, another topic that has been top of mind here in the newsroom was actually, and this wasn't something we talked about before I hit record, but I'll throw this at you and just see what you think.
Okay.
Matthew Heath, he's back here in America, through a lot of help with from Senator Haggerty, and it kind of seemed like there were a lot of politics in play. Do you know anything about that, or can you give your initial reaction to Matthew Heath being back here?
I'm sure Senator Haggerty was involved as well. I wasn't aware of that, but our office was involved with that as well, and I'm glad he's home. There's a lot more to that story that I'm not at liberty to say, but it's he shouldn't have been in prison down there. No shape, form, or fashion.
And okay, and is there anything about the process of getting him back that you can share?
Yeah, it's just it's always a difficult process, and you've got you just and it's very frustrating for the families about what's going on. His was a little different than some of the other instances, like Miss Griner and the rest of them. His was a completely different what he was doing there, and he was not he didn't get arrested for bringing weed into the country or doing something illegal like that. It was a different under different circumstances, but I'll just leave it at that. If he wants to explain it, he can. But he was, in my opinion, he should have never been in prison down there. And I think it also, and the travel agency folks won't like this, but this is not the time to go out of the country. Our enemies no longer fear us, and our allies are questioning a lot of our motives right now.
Okay, and I'll ask this, and if you can't answer this, that's fine. I don't believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, I don't believe we have an ambassador for Venezuela. Did that make it more difficult?
Makes it very difficult, actually. Yeah, makes it very difficult.
Is there
You
any?
have to deal with other countries that deal with them, and you have to engage the State Department. Of course, you don't just, not like a bunch of cowboys just pulling up down there and saying, let's get him out. It's a process, and we have in our office some of the best people in the country. Matter of fact, the ladies in our office that do this type of thing, and some of the others, the senators and the congressmen throughout the country actually rely on them for their expertise. They're the best. The folks that we have in my congressional office are the best in the country, no question. I get asked about them all the time and what they can do to there's other situations in other countries, and they know the process, and they've done a very good job through COVID and all this other. It's a full-time deal for them, and they take it very serious.
All right, and just switching gears again, I have two questions about Russia and Ukraine, and then we'll be done.
That's great.
So as you know, Russian President Vladimir Putin has now completed the illegal annexation of 4 Ukrainian regions. Do you think this complicates anything in terms of U.S. support for Ukraine?
We already support them wholeheartedly, and we've spent untold billions of dollars. You got to understand, Russia's entire military budget is around $90 billion. And the United States has probably spent close to $70 billion over there. And in arms and in cash and other things. So the situation's complicated. It doesn't matter what Putin says or declares something. It's just I think what he's trying to do is just gamesmanship. He'll claim an area and say, you know, that's our area, and it doesn't change the borders. It doesn't change anything else. I think he's an egomaniac, and he's a thug, and he's no greater than a third world thug. Their GNP is ridiculously low, and we just need to make sure those dollars that we're spending over there are being spent wisely, and they're not stealing it. That's one of the major concerns I have in the whole thing is that how it parallels Vietnam. When we went to Vietnam, we sent money first, and probably some of it got stolen. Then we sent armaments, and our armaments were so technologically advanced that we had to send people in there to handle them and as advisors. And then we sent people, and then they sent home body bags, and we're still dealing with the troubles of Vietnam. Not just PTSD, but Agent Orange and other things. We deal with that on a day-to-day basis in our office. And the war was over in the 70s. So I just hope we are cognizant of that fact. And also the fact that China is, we're kind of picking and choosing. China has been a horrible actor. They've imprisoned millions of people, these Uyghurs. They're Muslim folks, and they've imprisoned them in concentration camps and apparently torturing them and forced labor and all this other. And yet we just turn a blind eye to them and also what China's doing down in Central America through their Belt and Road Initiative. And so I think we better be really careful, and we got to be ready, because all China's doing right now is just watching everything we do with Ukraine. And they will, they know our supply chains. They know who are our allies. They know who will back us and who won't. And they're watching just how ready the American taxpayers are when they make a move on Taiwan, which they will. So I think we better be ready to step up if this is what we're getting. If we want to get into world wars or in other people's business, this is exactly the way you do it. And I would hope that the White House would be a little bit more cautious in the future with the American taxpayers' dollars, because it's you remember when Trump wanted to build a wall on Mexico, and it was $4 billion, and they talked about how that would just break the bank, and we just did 40 billion right off the bat. And the number 2 country when we got involved in this, the number 2 country was Estonia for contribution to the conflict on the side of the Ukrainians. And that's changed a lot since then, but Europe needs to step up. England, Germany, the rest of them, they need to step up a lot more. And America just we don't need to be funding these wars all over the country, all over the world. We need to manage our own business right now.
All right. And so the last question is, previously the Biden administration did not want to send Ukraine any weapons that fires into Russia. And while the U.S. won't recognize Russia's annexation, do you think Russia could still take aim at U.S. weapons to further escalate the war?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think there's a question, though, does that move to nuclear war? And the question is, will Russia's, and it's been reported that some of the generals, they don't think when Putin, if he were to give that order of world war, because, and you could do limited nukes. There's all kinds of things that, that they could do on a lower level. But if he hits the nuclear button, it's all hands on deck. And I just don't think we need to push it to that point. And I don't know, we don't need to keep we don't need to back Putin too far into this corner, because if we do, that would be his option. And that could be a very deadly option for the world. Although I think they could do limited nuclear strikes. And I've talked to people about that and the research on that. And I know what they're capable of, and it wouldn't blow over into this huge thermonuclear war, but that'd be a scary proposition. I think the world's economy would be shook pretty bad if we were to get into that situation where he was in a limited nuclear war. And if, of course, if Ukraine is admitted in NATO, and then does that in the the code of NATO is, you attack one of us, you attack us all. So that could put us in another spot too as well. So we need more diplomacy right now than we do bullets, I'm afraid, because we're gonna end up spending a lot of money and get a lot of people killed. And I think a lot of this was avoidable. In the beginning of the war, the American taxpayers basically funded the war on both sides through our own donation and through oil contracts with Russia. And now with the whoever did it, doesn't really matter at this point, but with the pipeline being severed, you're going to see Germany and places like that really be in a spot this winter, and that could really turn ugly quick.
All right. Those were all of my questions. Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about today?
No, I don't think so. We're good.
All right.
Thank you.
Sounds great. Thank you for taking the time out to do this.
Hey,
Yeah.
They took over 2 liters of fluid off my daughter. I didn't know if you wanted to add that or not. That's kind of maybe a little more personal, but it was pretty serious at that point. That she was in a lot of pain. She's a tough little cowgirl, though. Like I said, she holds up under pressure.
Yeah. Was that yesterday?
Yeah, it's yesterday.
Okay. All right. Well, I will make sure that we report it. Because what we're probably going to do is spread this out through all the shows today. Different sound bites.
Thanks, brother. I appreciate it.
Thank you. You have a good day.